so I just got back from what was supposed to be the honeymoon of my dreams, and I'm still processing what went down. My husband Jake and I had saved up for 3 years to do 2 weeks in Maui. We're talking oceanfront suite at the Grand Wailea, couples massages, sunset dinners at Mama's Fish House, the whole 9 yards. We'd been planning this since we got engaged at Fenway Park, go Sox, and counting down the days. Everything started out perfect. We flew out on United, first-class tickets we'd snagged with miles we'd been hoarding forever. The resort was incredible. Private lanai overlooking the ocean, those fancy Toto toilets that basically do everything for you, and a swim-up bar where the Mai Tais never stopped flowing. Jake and I were living our best life, finally unwinding after the wedding chaos. Then on day 4, I'm lounging by the pool in my new Victoria's Secret bikini, reading some trashy beach novel and working on my tan, when I hear this familiar voice, yelling, "There's my favorite sister." My blood literally ran cold. I look up and there's my brother Dylan, rolling up with his ratty duffel bag and that stupid grin he gets when he knows he's doing something he shouldn't. I sat up so fast I knocked over my pina colada. "Dylan, what are you doing here?" He plops down on Jake's lounger like he belongs there and goes, "Surprise! I figured you guys could use some company. Plus, I've never been to Hawaii and flights were cheap on Southwest." Y'all, I cannot even begin to describe the rage that washed over me. This man, this grown 28-year-old man, thought it was perfectly fine to crash our honeymoon. Jake came back from the bathroom and his face went from relaxed vacation mode to, "Oh, hell no," in about 2 seconds flat. "Bro, what are you doing here?" Jake asked, trying to keep his voice level. Dylan launched into this whole sob story about how he'd just broken up with his girlfriend Madison, shocker, that's like the 5th one this year, and needed to clear his head and reconnect with family. He actually had the audacity to ask if he could crash in our suite because the hotel was fully booked and rooms were mad expensive. I stood up, wrapped my sarong around me, and tried to channel every ounce of patience I had left. "Dylan, this is our honeymoon. You can't just show up uninvited. This is supposed to be romantic time for Jake and me." He rolled his eyes, actually rolled his eyes, and said I was being selfish and that family should always come first. The thing is, this is classic Dylan. He's always been the golden child who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. Growing up, he'd constantly crash my plans, ruin my dates, embarrass me in front of friends, and somehow I was always the bad guy for getting upset. He once showed up to my college graduation party wearing a "Congrats on your Mrs. Degree" t-shirt as a joke, and my parents thought it was hilarious. I told him he needed to leave. He laughed and said I was being dramatic. That's when Jake stepped in and said, "Dude, you need to go, now." Dylan got all defensive, saying Jake was whipped, and that I'd changed since getting married. He actually tried to make Jake feel bad for taking my side. The situation escalated when Dylan started making snide comments about how we were wasting money on overpriced tourist traps and should be exploring the real Hawaii with him. He criticized our dinner reservations, mocked our couple's activities, and even suggested we were being basic for wanting to do the road to Hana. That night, while Jake and I were trying to salvage our romantic dinner at Morimoto, amazing sushi BTW, Dylan showed up again. He'd somehow figured out where we were and pulled up a chair to our table for 2. The waiter looked confused, Jake looked ready to explode, and I finally lost it. "Dylan, you need to leave, right now. This is completely inappropriate." He tried to order a Sapporo and some edamame like nothing was wrong. I stood up, threw my napkin on the table, and said loud enough for other diners to hear, "You are ruining my honeymoon. Get out!" He tried to play victim, saying I was making a scene and embarrassing him. The audacity. I grabbed my Michael Kors clutch and walked out, Jake following after throwing cash on the table for our drinks. Dylan had the nerve to yell after us about how I'd regret treating family this way. Back at the hotel, I was shaking with anger. Jake held me while I ugly cried on our beautiful balcony, my mascara probably running all over his Tommy Bahama shirt. We'd worked so hard for this trip, saved every penny, turned down nights out with friends, all so we could have this perfect honeymoon. And here was Dylan, acting like it was spring break in Cancun. The next morning, Dylan was waiting in the lobby. He'd slept on the beach, supposedly, and looked rough. He tried to guilt-trip me about leaving him homeless in paradise, but I wasn't having it. I told him to get on the next flight back to Boston or I'd call security. He called me a bridezilla and stormed off. That's when I made the decision that would blow up my family group chat. I was done protecting Dylan from the consequences of his actions. I was done being the difficult one for having boundaries. I called my mom and told her exactly what her precious son had done. Her response: "Oh, honey, he's just going through a tough time. You could have been more understanding. It's just a vacation." Just a vacation. This woman who cried happy tears at my wedding, who helped me pick out my dress at David's bridal, who knows how much this meant to me. She was taking his side. Again. I hung up on her. First time in my life. Then I opened our family group chat and dropped the truth bomb. Every single detail. How Dylan crashed our honeymoon, ruined multiple romantic moments, refused to leave when asked, and was now playing victim. I even included screenshots of his texts trying to guilt trip me. The responses were exactly what I expected. Dad said I was being dramatic. My aunt suggested I should have just found Dylan a cheap motel. My cousin Brad, who wasn't even invited to my wedding, because he's a jerk, chimed in that I've always been selfish. Only my grandma and my cousin Jess sided with me, saying what Dylan did was completely out of line. I did something I never thought I'd do. I left the family group chat. Then I blocked Dylan's number. Jake and I spent the rest of our honeymoon doing exactly what we wanted, when we wanted. We did sunrise yoga on Wiley Beach, drove the road to Hana blasting classic rock, ate way too much shave ice, and renewed our vows just the two of us on a secluded beach at sunset. It wasn't the honeymoon we'd originally planned, but we made it work. By the time we flew back to Logan Airport, I had 47 missed calls from various family members. My mom had left voicemails crying about how I was tearing the family apart. Dylan had been crashing on friends' couches because my parents were in Florida for the winter, and I guess none of his buddies wanted him long-term. Dylan tried to show up at our condo in Cambridge the day after we got back. Our doorman, Kenny, bless him, didn't let him up. He left a pathetic note saying he was sorry and just wanted his sister back. Too little, too late, bro. Jake's been amazing through all this. His family thinks Dylan is insane and they've been super supportive. His mom even sent me flowers with a card saying, "Boundaries are healthy, sweetie." This is why I love the Mitchells. They actually understand respect. The family drama has continued to escalate. My mom tried to ambush me at Whole Foods. She knows I shop there every Sunday. My dad left a message saying I need to be the bigger person. They're acting like I committed some unforgivable sin by not letting Dylan third wheel our honeymoon. You know what, though? I don't regret a thing. For the first time in my life, I stood up to Dylan's nonsense and didn't back down. I'm 26 years old, married to an amazing man, working my dream job at Mass General, and I'm done letting my family guilt trip me into accepting toxic behavior. Dylan's still couch surfing as far as I know. He posted some passive-aggressive meme on Instagram about fake family and fair weather sisters. I unfollowed him. My mental health has never been better. To anyone dealing with family boundary issues, stand your ground. Your wedding, your honeymoon, your life, your rules. If they can't respect that, that's on them, not you. Don't let anyone, family or not, make you feel guilty for protecting your peace. As I write this, Jake and I are planning our 1-year anniversary trip. We're thinking Santorini, and you better believe it's going to be just the two of us. No surprise, visitors allowed. Updated. So it's been about 3 weeks since I posted about my brother crashing my honeymoon, and things have gotten absolutely wild. I thought cutting him off would be the end of it, but apparently my family has decided to make this their hill to die on. First off, thank you to everyone who validated that I wasn't crazy. Y'all don't know how much I needed to hear that I had every right to be upset. Growing up in a family where Dylan could literally do no wrong really messes with your sense of normal. Here's what's gone down. Dylan apparently hit rock bottom pretty quick. After couch surfing for 2 weeks, his boy Tyler finally told him he needed to find somewhere else to crash. His other friends started ghosting his texts because I guess showing up at 2 a.m. drunk and crying about your evil sister gets old real fast. Then this man had the absolute audacity to show up at my workplace. I'm a cardiac nurse at Mass General, and he literally walked into the hospital, told security he was there to see his sister for a family emergency, and got all the way to my unit. I was in the middle of checking vitals on a post-op patient when I see Dylan standing at the nurse's station, looking like he hadn't showered in days. My charge nurse, Beth, absolute legend, took one look at my face and stepped in. She told Dylan he needed to leave immediately or she'd call security. He started making a scene saying he just needed 5 minutes to talk to me. I had to walk away to avoid absolutely losing it in front of my patients. Security ended up escorting him out, but not before he yelled, "I'm sorry, okay? I just miss my sister," loud enough for the entire floor to hear. My coworkers were super supportive, but it was embarrassing as hell. I had to file an incident report and specifically ban him from being allowed visitor access. That night, my mom called Jake's phone since I'd been ignoring hers. He put it on speaker and she went off. Apparently Dylan had called her crying about being banned from seeing his sister, and she was convinced I was having some kind of mental breakdown. She actually used the phrase honeymoon phase making you crazy, and suggested I needed therapy for my anger issues. Jake, bless his heart, very calmly told her that the only therapy I needed was distance from toxic family members who couldn't respect boundaries. She called him manipulative and said he was poisoning me against my family. He hung up on her mid-sentence. The next day, I get a text from my dad with a link to a GoFundMe. Y'all, Dylan created a fundraiser titled, "Help Me Get Back on My Feet." After family abandonment, I cannot make this up. The description was a whole sob story about how his sister cut him off for a misunderstanding and left him homeless. He'd raised $200, mostly from our Aunt Karen and some family friends who didn't know the real story. I was livid. I commented on the GoFundMe with the actual facts. This man crashed my honeymoon uninvited, refused to leave when asked, and is facing the consequences of his own actions. He is not homeless due to family abandonment. He's couch surfing because he can't respect boundaries. Please don't enable this behavior. Dylan deleted my comment within an hour, but not before several. People saw it. His friend Marcus actually messaged me privately saying he had no idea about the honeymoon thing and withdrew his donation. Small victories. Then came the family reunion drama. My cousin Lisa's wedding was coming up, and I'd already RSVP'd months ago. It was going to be at this gorgeous venue in the Berkshires, and Jake and I had been looking forward to it. But when Lisa texted to check in, it became clear there were conditions. "Hey, so excited to see you guys at the wedding. Just wanted to make sure you and Dylan can be civil for one day. It's really important to me that there's no drama on my big day." I responded, "Of course Jake and I will be perfectly civil. We're there to celebrate you." Her next text, "I mean, could you maybe talk to him beforehand? Clear the air? Mom says you won't return his calls." That's when I realized this wasn't about being civil. They wanted me to reconcile with Dylan before the wedding. I politely declined, saying we'd be happy to attend, but I wasn't ready to have that conversation with Dylan yet. 2 days later, I get a call from Lisa's mom, my Aunt Patricia, saying they'd had to make some adjustments to the seating chart, and that it would be better for everyone if Jake and I didn't attend. I was uninvited from my cousin's wedding because I wouldn't make up with Dylan. Jake was furious. He wanted to call them out publicly, but I was just tired. I sent Lisa a text saying I understood and wished her the best. She left me on read. The family group chat, which I'd rejoined briefly to coordinate wedding stuff, exploded. My mom posted this long message about how family is forever and that I was being stubborn and prideful. Several relatives chimed in agreeing. My grandma privately messaged me saying she thought everyone was being ridiculous, but she didn't want to stir the pot. The wedding came and went. I saw the photos on Facebook. Dylan was in the wedding party giving a toast, dancing with relatives. Everyone looked so happy and united. Without me. It stung more than I wanted to admit. Meanwhile, Dylan's situation got more desperate. He started applying to jobs but kept using me as a reference without asking. I got a call from a Dunkin' manager, asking about Dylan's work ethic and reliability. I was honest. I said I couldn't provide a reference as we weren't currently in contact. He didn't get the job. He then tried a new tactic, showing up at Jake's CrossFit gym. Jake was in the middle of a workout when Dylan walked in, pretending he wanted to sign up for a membership. Jake's coach Mike knew the situation and told Dylan the gym was at capacity. Dylan tried to catch Jake in the parking lot, but Jake just got in his Tesla and drove off without a word. Our neighbor Mrs. Chen told me she'd seen Dylan hanging around our building several times. She's this sweet older lady who knows everyone's business, and she was concerned. I had to explain the situation, and she started keeping an eye out, even threatened to hit him with my purse if he tried anything. I love that woman. The breaking point came when Dylan did something truly unforgivable. He created a fake Instagram account and started messaging my friends. He told my best friend Sarah that I was going through something and asked her to talk to me about reconciling with family. He messaged my coworkers, saying he was worried about my mental health. He even reached out to Jake's sister with some sob story. That's when I lawyered up. I went to a family friend who's an attorney and got a cease and desist letter drafted. It basically said Dylan needed to stop contacting me, my husband, our friends, and our workplaces, or we'd pursue a restraining order. When Dylan got the letter, he absolutely lost it. He called our parents screaming that I was trying to ruin his life with legal threats. My mom called me in tears, begging me to drop the lawyer involvement. She actually said, "He's your brother. You don't sue family." I explained that I wasn't suing him. I was establishing legal boundaries since he couldn't respect personal ones. She accused me of being vindictive and said I'd regret this when something happens to him. That manipulation tactic was the final straw. I realized this wasn't just about Dylan anymore. My entire family, minus a few sane relatives, was complicit in this toxic dynamic. They'd rather enable his behavior than support my right to boundaries. I made a decision that honestly felt like cutting off a limb. I went full no contact with my parents too. Blocked their numbers, blocked them on social media, everything. The relief I felt was immediately followed by guilt, which I'm working through in therapy. Actual therapy, not the kind my mom thinks I need. Dylan finally got a job at a sports authority in Natick. He's apparently crashing with some girl he met on Bumble. My cousin Jess, the sane one, keeps me loosely updated, but I've asked her not to share details unless it's important. The last I heard, my parents were telling everyone that I'd lost my way and that Jake had isolated me from my family. The irony is that Jake's family has been more supportive and loving than my own ever was. His parents even offered to pay for our therapy sessions as a Christmas gift, saying, "Mental health is the best investment." Sometimes I look at old family photos and feel this ache in my chest. But then I remember the peace I've found. No more walking on eggshells, no more being the scapegoat, no more sacrificing my happiness for family harmony. Jake and I are doing better than ever. We're actually planning a vow renewal in Hawaii for our 5-year anniversary. Same resort, same suite, and definitely no surprise visitors allowed. Our marriage counselor says we've grown stronger through this, learning to protect our relationship from outside toxicity. To everyone dealing with similar family drama, your peace is worth more than their approval. Sometimes loving someone means loving them from a distance. And just because someone is family doesn't mean they deserve unlimited access to your life. I still hope Dylan gets his life together. I hope my parents realize their enabling hasn't helped him. But I'm not waiting around for either of those things to happen. I'm living my life, building my chosen family, and protecting my peace. Next update will probably be a while. I'm focusing on healing and moving forward. Thanks for being my support system, internet strangers. Y'all have been more understanding than my actual family. Updated. Okay, so I thought I was done updating, but the universe apparently had other plans. It's been 2 months since my last post, and I really need to get this off my chest because what happened last week is just... I'm still processing it, honestly. Remember how I said Dylan was working at Sports Authority and crashing with some girl from Bumble? Well, that situation imploded spectacularly. The girl, Amanda, reached out to me on LinkedIn of all places. She'd apparently done some social media stalking and found my profile. Her message was wild. Basically, Dylan had been living with her for about a month. Told her this whole sob story about how his abusive sister had made him homeless, and she felt bad for him. But then she found his GoFundMe page, did more digging, and realized his story had more holes than Swiss cheese. The real kicker? He'd been telling her he was a medical sales rep who was between contracts, and that's why he couldn't contribute to rent. Meanwhile, he was working retail and spending his paychecks on weed and video games. She kicked him out after he stole $300 from her purse and tried to gaslight her about it. Amanda and I ended up having coffee at Starbucks in Seaport. She's actually cool, 25, works in marketing, has her life together. She apologized for believing his version of events and said she felt stupid for falling for his act. I told her not to blame herself. Dylan's been perfecting his victim routine for 28 years. She showed me their text conversations, and it was like reading a masterclass in manipulation. He'd convinced her I was jealous of his success, that I'd always been the golden child. Ha! And that he'd generously tried to surprise me on my honeymoon to make peace, but I'd cruelly rejected him. The delusion was real. But here's where it gets interesting. Amanda mentioned something that made my blood run cold. Dylan had been talking about getting his inheritance early, and how he had some plan involving our grandmother. My grandma Rose is 84, lives alone in Newton, and has always had a soft spot for Dylan despite his behavior. I immediately called my cousin Jess, who lives near Grandma. She hadn't noticed anything unusual, but agreed to check in more frequently. I also called my grandmother's neighbor, Mrs. Fitzgerald, who promised to keep an eye out. 3 days later, Jess called me in a panic. She'd stopped by Grandma's house and found Dylan there with some sketchy-looking guy in a suit. They had papers spread all over the dining room table, and Grandma looked confused. When Jess asked what was going on, Dylan said they were helping Grandma with some financial planning. Jess isn't stupid. She took photos of the documents while pretending to make tea and sent them to her mom, who works at Bank of America. Turns out Dylan was trying to get Grandma to sign power of attorney over to him and take out a reverse mortgage on her house. This was the final straw. I called my dad, actually broke my no-contact rule, and told him what was happening. To his credit, he immediately drove to Grandma's house. For the first time in my life, I heard him absolutely tear into Dylan. The financial advisor turned out to be some guy Dylan met at a bar who wasn't even licensed. Dad called me that night crying. Actually crying. He apologized for not believing me, for always taking Dylan's side, for failing as a parent. He said seeing Dylan try to scam his own grandmother had opened his eyes. It was surreal hearing accountability from him after all these years. My mom, however, doubled down. She insisted there must have been a misunderstanding, and that Dylan was probably just trying to help. Even my dad was like, "Are you serious right now?" Their marriage has been strained ever since. The fallout was swift. Grandma was horrified when she realized what Dylan had tried to do. She'd thought she was just updating her will. The family group chat exploded again, but this time, everyone was on my side. Suddenly, all these relatives who'd called me dramatic were sharing their own stories about Dylan's sketchy behavior. My uncle admitted Dylan had stolen tools from his garage. My cousin Brad, the one who called me selfish, revealed Dylan owed him $2,000. Even Aunt Patricia, who uninvited me from Lisa's wedding, called to apologize and said she'd been blind to the truth. Dylan went completely off the rails. He posted this unhinged rant on Facebook about how the family was conspiring against him and how I'd poisoned everyone's minds. He accused me of elder abuse for protecting Grandma, claimed Jake was controlling me, and said we'd all regret turning our backs on him. The post got screenshot and shared in the family chat before he deleted it. My mom finally broke. She called me sobbing, saying she didn't know where she went wrong, how her baby boy became this person. I had complicated feelings, sympathy for her pain, but also anger that it took him literally trying to defraud Grandma for her to see the truth. Last Thursday, Dylan hit rock bottom. He got arrested for drunken disorderly conduct after getting kicked out of a Celtics game. He'd snuck into the TD Garden with fake tickets, got wasted on overpriced Bud Light, and started a fight when security tried to remove him. His mugshot made the local news Reddit page. He used his one phone call to contact me. First time I'd heard his voice in months. He wasn't angry or manipulative. He just sounded broken. He cried and said he didn't know how things got so bad, that he was sorry for everything, that he needed help. I told him I couldn't be his help. But I did give him the number for a rehab center that one of my patients had success with. I said if he got clean and got therapy, maybe someday we could work on rebuilding from scratch. But that day wasn't today. He's currently at a 30-day program. In Worcester, my parents are paying for it. They've also started going to family therapy to understand their role in enabling him. Dad sends me updates sometimes. I appreciate it, but I've maintained my boundaries. The family dynamics have completely shifted. Those relatives who attacked me for standing up to Dylan, they're all eating crow now. The wedding I was uninvited from? Lisa personally apologized and said she'd been pressured by her mom. We're not close anymore, but at least there's acknowledgement. Jake and I are still in therapy, working through the trauma of all this. It's helped us develop even stronger boundaries and communication. We've decided when we have kids someday, they'll have limited contact with my side of the family until we see sustained change. Grandma is doing well. She updated her will with an actual lawyer and put some safeguards in place. She told me she's proud of me for standing up to Dylan when no one else would. You might have saved this family by refusing to play along, she said. Amanda and I weirdly became friends through this. She's dating a nice guy now, an actual doctor, not a fake medical sales rep. We laugh about how we both survived Hurricane Dylan. I'm sharing this update because I want people to understand that sometimes it takes something drastic for enablers to see the truth. My family needed to see Dylan try to defraud a vulnerable, elderly relative before they acknowledged what I'd been saying for years. Standing your ground is hard. Maintaining boundaries is harder, but it's necessary. If I hadn't cut Dylan off after the honeymoon incident, if I'd given in to family pressure, he might have succeeded in his scheme against Grandma, to anyone dealing with a toxic family member. Document everything. Trust your gut, and don't let anyone make you feel guilty for protecting yourself. The people who matter will eventually see the truth. The ones who don't, they're showing you who they are. I hope Dylan gets better. I hope he does the work. But I'm not holding my breath. My life is peaceful now. My marriage is stronger than ever, and I've learned that family isn't about blood. It's about respect, love, and healthy boundaries. This is hopefully my last update unless something major happens. Thank you all for following this journey and for your support. You've helped more than you know. Updated final update. Quick final update. Dylan completed rehab and has been sober for 6 months. He's working at Home Depot, lives in a sober living house, and hasn't contacted me once. He sent a letter through our dad, a real apology, taking accountability for everything. No request to reconcile, just acknowledgement of the pain he caused. My parents are different people now. Mom finally admitted she enabled him because she felt guilty about working so much when we were young. They've respected my boundaries completely. We have monthly dinners now. Just dinner, nothing more. It's nice. Grandma's doing great. She made me executor of her will and removed Dylan completely. She says she's not angry anymore, just disappointed. It took so long for everyone to see the truth. Jake and I are expecting our first child. We'll tell my family eventually, but for now, we're enjoying our peace. Sometimes healing means accepting that things will never be what you hoped, but finding contentment in what is. Thanks for everything, Reddit. Your support meant the world. Going to focus on my growing family now. Stay strong, everyone. Boundaries are worth it.